Let's begin with Saturn mythology. Now, Saturn or Saturnus, who was the Roman god in Roman mythology, basically equivalent to the Greek Kronos, where they basically got him from. Now, we talking about 5th century BCE, right? So we had the Temple of Saturn built in Rome around 497 BCE. So this was something that they wasn't just, you know, messing around with. This was something serious for them to build the kind of monuments they built to Saturn and everything that surrounds Saturn mythology. These people were serious about Saturn. So now you also had the a festival in Rome called Saturnalia. Now Saturnalia was basically a festival that started December 17th to December 23rd, and they basically made a sacrifice to the temple of Saturn. They exchanged gifts. They basically partied. Now, Saturnalia was also called the Festival of Light. They basically lit a bunch of candles that celebrated their quest for enlightenment, their quest for knowledge and truth. Now, also, you had, after the festival, you had the birthday of the unconquerable sun, which was December 23rd. So, this all goes into the whole winter solstice thing. This goes into Jesus and the whole Jesus mythology about him being born December 25th. It's not a coincidence that the birth and death of Jesus is right around the same time when you get into the winter solstice. So you have Jesus dying on the cross of the zodiac and rising again, with the whole rising of the sun after the winter solstice. Remember, the sun is dead for a couple of days, then it rises again, symbolizing rebirth. This is what all this stuff is talking about. This is what it's getting into. But there's more to this because you got to understand which sun is talking about. You got to understand what Rome was really about, what their place was, what they was trying to do as far as getting out of the ancient world and bringing into place a new kind of let's say mythology or a new kind of way to spread their rule. And it's basically what took place when you have Christianity come into place, which we're going to get into. So after they celebrated the birthday of the unconquerable sun, they celebrated the renewal of light, which was basically New Year's. So the Romans basically celebrated these things for over 500 years until Christianity came into play and basically, outlawed everything and said everything was pagan and devil worship or what have you, even their own worship, even the documentation of them being pagans or what have you, Christianity came into play, and then we eventually get Christmas and New Year. So this is basically where this stuff comes from. It all really goes back to Saturn. So now we already know that they worship Saturn as a sun. Now, the thing we're going to get into in this video is you have to understand, when was Saturn a sun? And a lot of people will tell you, and from a lot of books that you will read, that Saturn was a sun that wasn't that long ago. Now, you got to think about it. If they was worshiping Saturn back in the 5th century BCE, that's not that long ago. That's in human history, recorded history, so to speak. They was worshiping Saturn as the sun. So think about it. It wasn't a telescope wasn't invented until like the 17th century. So they obviously was seeing something that pertains to Saturn, and it was something about Saturn that they seen that made them worship it. Besides, just the rings. And this is what we're going to get into, because you got to understand about this Saturn as a sun and what it really pertains to. And a lot of times, what you're going to find out in this video as well, when we think it's talking about the sun that we know of today, it's talking about Saturn. So then they had to have been able to see Saturn from Earth. And when you pay attention to the other planets that they are obsessed with in the occult, particularly Mars and Venus. Now, I mentioned before, Venus, when it goes into its 8-year cycle, it does so in the shape of a 5-pointed star. And we know the 5-pointed star is associated with, Satanism. It's associated with witchcraft. It's associated with Lucifer, the light bearer. And we know when a lot of people see this is immediately what they run to. Now, also, what a lot of people don't realize is Venus and Mars aligns with Saturn. to give us this, to give us the great light, to give us the bright star. This is a very ancient symbol that you're going to see a lot in this video, and you're going to see a lot in the ancient world when you look. Now, also, during the formation of these three planets, of the planets aligning, you get this symbol of the crescent and the star. And again, this is another symbol that we see a lot in the ancient world. Now, most people, when you see the crescent and the star, you got to understand which one you're looking at. You got to understand if you're looking at ancient world symbol, which is what we see commonly in ancient Mesopotamia. You see this with the Assyrians, the Babylonians, or what have you. The formation, the beginning of the formation of these planets. But then you also get the crescent and star when you're looking at the moon and the sun, which alludes to a lot of stuff in Islam, as I talked about before. Two separate things. And this is something that confuses a lot of people in their research. You got to understand what it's talking about. And if you don't understand about this formation that takes place and about this bright star, remember, Venus is the bright and morning star. But you got to understand about the bright star and why they call it the bright star and what it all pertains to, which we're going to get into. Now, a lot of you have seen this before. Now, the Assyrians and the Babylonians, just like the ancient Egyptians, they left behind a lot of clues, a lot of artifacts that we can still see today. Now, in this depiction, you see the seated man. You see these three men, and you see this wheel. Now, when you look at the wheel, look at the power coming from it. Look at the shape, the design it's in. It kind of sort of resembles the morning star I just showed you with the alignment of the planets. Now, to a lot of people, it represents Saturn. And when you look at the wheel, when you look at that alignment, it kind of sort of looks exactly like it. So there are other things in this whole picture as well. When you look at the wavy lines on the ground, when you look at the waves in the body of the seated man, as well as the third man in line, they have waves in their bodies as well. Now, a lot of people believe that these waves represent energy, power. You see the waves on the wheel as well. This is supposed to represent the power of Saturn, the energy that Saturn is supposed to be putting out, and how it's affecting us in reality. Now, the seated man is supposed to represent Shamash. Shamash is the Babylonian sun god who is associated with the planet Saturn. So now when a lot of people see this, this is something that a lot of people do not put together, the association of Shamash and Saturn. So now a lot of people in the ancient world said that Shamash represents Saturn, and Saturn being the dark star. It was another name they had for Saturn as the dark star. This is something that you'll find throughout the ancient world, and in a lot of readings, you'll hear people refer to Saturn as the dark star, being like this sun that basically puts out the same energy, has the same effects on the planet as the sun that we know today, the morning sun. But this sun has the same effects, but also other effects on the planet. Remember, we can't ignore back in ancient times how much they worshiped the sun or Saturn. So supposedly there were two suns in the sky. This whole second sun that they are referring to was supposed to be the sun we know today. The sun we know today is the second sun, and the first sun is supposed to be Saturn. Now, the symbol that the seated man or Shamash is holding in his hand is supposed to represent Thorazaz. Now, Thorazaz is a symbol that is seen all throughout the ancient world. You'll see it a lot when you understand it. You'll start pointing it out a lot more. Now, Thorazaz is associated with monsters. It's associated with giants. It's associated with the god Thor and Mjolnir, Thor's hammer. And we know that these things are supposed to represent power. Thor's hammer has electricity. It's a powerful weapon. Thorazaz is also associated with the planet Mars. Now, again, these things start to come together when you start paying attention. And as I said, this glyph, this picture has a lot of stuff in it that we can't get all into right now. But when you look at it, you also see the same type of representation in ancient Egypt. So the Assyrians and the Babylonians was both trying to tell us the same things, as well as a bunch of other cultures around the world. They was trying to point out something, and it pertains to Saturn, as we'll get into. But now, I want to read from David Talbert's book called The Saturn Myth. And I want you to understand, like, a lot of people got into this stuff. A lot of people really talk about this kind of information. And as you can see, he wanted to give us that symbol, as you can see clearly on the front page. And again, this is a really, really ancient symbol. So it's saying here, anyone attempting to trace the Saturn legend must reckon with the primordial god figure whom ancient races celebrated as the Great Father, and who is said to have first organized the heavens and founded the antediluvian kingdom. Antediluvian basically means a kingdom without the religious control that we basically see today. The antediluvian kingdom of peace and plenty, the golden age. While few of us today can locate Saturn in the starry sphere, the earliest astral religions insist that the planet god was once the all-powerful ruler of heaven, but paradoxically, they also declared that he resided on earth as a great king. He was also the father both of gods and men. This dual character of the great father has been the subject of a centuries-long but unresolved debate. Was he a living ancestor, subsequently exaggerated into a cosmic divinity, or was he originally a celestial god whom later myths reduced to human proportions? The overwhelming preoccupation of ancient ritual is with an ancient great god. The myths say that the god emerged alone from the cosmic sea as the preeminent power in the heavens. Out of watery chaos, remember the waters of noon, he produced a new order. The ancients worshipped him as the creator and the supreme lord of the cosmos. This solitary god, according to the legend, founded a kingdom of unparalleled splendor. He was the divine ancestor of all earthly rulers. His kingdom, the prototype of the just and prosperous realm. Throughout his reign, an unending spring prevailed. The land produced freely, and men knew neither labor nor war. And the god king's towering form, means giant, ancients perceive the heaven man, a primordial giant whose body was the newly organized cosmos. The legends often present the figure as the first man or primordial man, whose history personified the struggle of good and evil. Whether emphasized the great father's character as creator, first king, or heaven man, widespread traditions proclaim him to be the planet Saturn. In investigating the traits of the archaic god, we must give greatest way to the oldest astral religions, those which are closest to the original experience. The best material coming from ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia provides a remarkably coherent picture of the god and enables one to see the development and the distortions of the idea among later peoples. The ancients conceived Saturn as the visible intelligence bringing forth the cosmos as his own body and regulating its revolutions. Thus was the planet denominated the heaven man, a being eventually recalled as the prototype of the human race, the first ancestor. When Saturn departed the world, the golden age catastrophically ended. This is the universal tale of the dying god, the overthrown first king or fallen first man. Whether betrayed by a dark force or chastised for having committed the forbidden sin or inflicted with old age. Notice this has to do with war and time and a weariness of mankind. The result is the same. A corruption of nature, which we are seeing today, and a progressive worsening of the human condition, which we have seen. The story is the first, and one could almost say only theme of tragedy and drama in antiquity. Saturn's golden age came to a sudden and catastrophic end, either caused by or accompanied by the fall of the great god. Now, when you read that, when you start getting into talks like this about Saturn, talking about the ancient mythologies and fables, Saturn, when it's talking about this great man, it's talking about Saturn. Understand, it's God that he's talking about, this king that he's talking about. He is metaphorically talking about Saturn. It's a parable in that too. You got to understand that these people, as I said, they can't give it straight to you. They're giving it to you in parable. So what he's talking about, David Talbert, he's talking about Saturn being this man. But again, it's a parable within that as well. Understand, everybody talks about this war. So when I say this to you, that in ancient times, they was talking about this war that happened. They was talking about the planet being at peace and stuff like that. Things were good. Something happened. And a lot of people trying to wrap their head around what that was. So again, you had a planet of peace. Everything was fine. Everything was good. Then something happened. And a lot of it is alluding to Saturn falling from a sun, from a star into basically what it is. And because of that, that brought about the destruction of the planet and the worsening, as he said, of people. And this is something that you are definitely going to see. I'm going to get into in this video as well. Now, when you get into this whole thing so far, when we talk about Samaj, when you look at the depiction of these giants, and I talked about this before, I believe that there was giants here. Everything in my research shows me that that's true. With all of the claims from people who actually work for the Smithsonian, who says that they threw bones in the oceans, they've been hiding giant bones for decades. They are really, who are you going to call when you find these bones? Just think about it. If you found the bones of a giant, you call the authorities or you call whoever that will come and basically cover up the situation. Now, you got to understand, even if it happened today, they have the power to make sure that no pictures get out. You would have to find it yourself, take the pictures, hide the pictures. And if you did post them, hope that a lot of people download them, because they have the capability today to delete them all, to get it from off the internet. So you got to understand that Smithsonian basically was going around covering up these bones and covering up people finding these giant skeletons or what have you. A lot of the pictures that we see today, I don't believe is real, but some of them possibly could be. But we know it's a cover up. But again, I talked about this before. So many ancient civilizations talking about giants and giants coming down to Earth. So if they talking about giants coming down to Earth, then this means that they was there to see it, meaning that men was already here when these giants was coming down. So the Bible talks about the sons of God coming into the daughters of men. Now, a lot of us believe that these giants coming down was from Saturn. This is where they came from. And that they came down here and they set up kingdoms. Now, again, we wasn't created here. We was obviously created somewhere else, and we was put here for whatever reason. And whatever happened, happened. But these giants at some point must have came down and they began to set up, kingdoms and rule. And so whatever happened to them happened. So again, the sons of God coming into the daughters of men, as I talked about before, it's not uncommon to see this as being possible, as these regular men that was already here on earth having children, and then these giants coming down and having sex with them. As I talked about, they say that these giants range between 7 and 30 feet tall. These are some huge beings. It's not inconceivable to see a 7 or 8 foot man having sex with a regular woman, as I showed you before with Shaq and Hoops, Yao Ming and his wife. You're talking about really tall people, even Manute Bol and his wife, really tall people that exist, that we know exist, having sex with, even shorter than average women. So it's not uncommon. So a lot of people believe that they came down, they set up these kingdoms, and they did bear children with regular human women, and they would be the heir to these kingdoms. So again, this is stuff that is, one, they try to hide, but you find it in so many different places in antiquity about these giants coming down, to the planet. Now, obviously, something happened to those ancient civilizations. Something happened that caused things to go from one way to, to another. So now we are basically left with a bunch of artifacts and a bunch of evidence, but really we don't have the complete picture. We're still trying to put it together. So a lot of us are still left wondering, what the hell happened? What's going on? Now, I talked about Ptah, talked about Atum, and the whole ancient Egyptian creation story. So now when you go back and you look at what the ancients was talking about, they clearly understood that something, from space created Earth, created us.